Good evening. It's the 10th of December 2025. These guys, what are they doing? Setting up or? Yep, setting up. Don't know who they are. Falun Gong probably. You got another group here. It's all in Chinese symbols. What's that say? Anyway, what I'm here for is a Venezuelan protest. I haven't been to a Venezuelan one before. It's Trump Hands Off Venezuela by the Friends of Venezuela or someone or other. Yeah, I think this must be Falun Gong. What's it say? Well, I can't read the Chinese, but mourning for 80 billion killed. 80 million, sorry, 80 billion. 80 million killed. And then this must be, I guess it must be the Venezuelan protest. And there's very limited number there. Oh yeah, you got a Chavez shirt on, and I don't know why, you know, this dude's here with his Palestinian flag, but yeah, hands off Venezuela, and I don't know why he couldn't get a Venezuelan flag. They're probably hard to come by. And then there's another Palestinian flag, unless the Venezuelan flag is very similar, but I doubt it. Oh, they're speaking already, so it hasn't even supposed to have started yet. I'm early. All right, so they got this.
I got to see.
Anyway, listen to the guy.
Of socialism. I got to visit a commune in which local groups, local families who had built their own apartment to live in, went to their local member and said, "Oi, give us the resources we need to continue building our project." That is socialism in action. They call themselves communists, they work like that. That is what we're defending. It is also important to remember that we do not just have a responsibility to show solidarity to anti-imperialist campaigns overseas, but also work in, with, and support anti-imperialist campaigns at home, namely Indigenous rights struggle. So I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land for which we meet, the Gadi people. I live on Darra country in Mount Druitt, and both of these places, including all over Australia, have a long history of resistance. A long history of resistance. And that's a tradition which we are carrying on today. And we will carry on in various movements for which we stand for. Thank you for coming again to fight against the death throes of the American empire. The empire is declining and drawing its last few breaths. But rather than change tactics, it doubles down on capitalism's never-ending need to expand and consume. And where else is easier to expand and consume compared to its own self-declared backyard? Latin America, specifically Venezuela. As Gramsci explains it, it is a historical crisis when something is dying and does not finish dying. And at the same time, something is being born and does not finish being born. The United States are on the cusp of starting a war in Venezuela. And the Australian government, the government of a fair go, is sitting idly by. We demand that the Australian government immediately repair diplomatic relations with Venezuela, denounce the US military aggression against Venezuela, and affirm Venezuela's right to self-determination. I will tell you what things make Venezuela really dangerous to the United States. It's not the alleged terrorism. It's not the drug trafficking, for which they have no proof of, boats carrying drugs, nor the Venezuelan government being involved. But they have proof of 87% of the drugs entering the US coming via the Pacific, not the Atlantic. The threat of Venezuela is that Chavez took over a country in deep poverty and misery, where profits from oil went overseas or to the pockets of a few rich. Suddenly, when Chavistas took the oil, there was money for scholarships, education courses, land reform, improving food quality, rebuilding the countryside to decrease the population in the slums, and medical care. The seizure of oil production into public hands allowed the Chavistas to increase social spending by 61%, $772 billion. Chavez learned the value of this when visiting a school attended by a high school classmate of his who was forced to cut his education short due to poverty. The classmate was now going to university and studying mathematics. Do you know what it means to go to school? It means that parents of children now in schools can teach them how to read. It means that more people can participate in society and politics and become active agents of change in their communities. It was the very money made public by Chavez that ensured this. That's what it means to go to school. That's what it means to be threatening to the United States. And so, the Americans do what they do best: imperialism. The Yankees whipped Venezuela with economic sabotage, media sabotage, social sabotage, terrorism, bombs, violence, blood, death, coup d'etat, manipulation of institutions, sanctions, and international pressure. Sanctions placed on Venezuela by the first Trump administration has led to a $642 billion loss. There have been 20 strikes on boats and 80 killed in the past 3 months. In previous destabilization attempts, the Guarimbas were set up. The Guarimbas are these huge, violent street blockades where protesters camp around the blockade with guns to fire on anyone who dares try to pull it down. In 2014, it led to 43 dead, mostly civilians. Alonso, the organizer of the 2004 Guarimbazo, feared for the safety of his family. The guy who organized these blockades feared for the safety of his family. So, where else but send them to the democracy, freedom and peace-loving Miami, America? We are told that this intervention is necessary for a few myths. The first myth is that America is coming in and fighting for democracy, and they, with the media in tow, then declare that the Venezuelan government are tyrants or drug kingpins. Just like our Benz, Allende and Mossadegh, when they started making social reforms and using their oil, sugar, iron, copper and labour for the benefits of their people instead of the local and foreign rich. They're not there to fight for democracy. If they were, they'll be sending troops into Saudi Arabia to liberate the migrant workers in Israel, migrant workers, or into Israel, where 100% of the Thai female workers have indicated that they've been sexually assaulted, or into South Korea during the Syngman Rhee regime, or the Philippines during Ferdinand Marcos's regime. But instead of fighting against these brutal dictatorships, they send troops and resources to support them, or to install them and after overthrowing democratically elected governments, like in Chile, Nicaragua, and Guatemala. This is because these installed and supported regimes do not use resources for social reform. That is why the US is targeting Venezuela, because they want Maria Corina Machado to do exactly what she said she would. Quote, "We will have security for foreign investment and a transparent, massive privatization program that is waiting for you." Not for the Venezuelan people, for the United States and their rich. The second myth is that Venezuela is trafficking drugs into the United States. It is this justification which allows for the killing of fishing boats just off the coast. On Friday, footage was shown of the double tap strike. After destroying a boat and killing some Colombian fishermen off the coast of Venezuela, the US Navy saw survivors and fired again. The Pentagon's own manual says orders to fire upon the shipwrecks is illegal. And how do they defend this? We can do it because Obama did it. But not only are the killing of these people completely immoral and illegal, but the justification for the strikes are just plain wrong. If Venezuela is a huge drug cartel shipping drugs into the United States, why do 87% enter through the Pacific? The United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime has declared Venezuela free of all illicit crops. If the United States was so worried about the drug abuse in their country, shouldn't they go raid the huge parties of billionaires and CEOs? But what can we do from halfway across the world? First things first, we must build a movement. Today, you must meet as many people here as you can. Make those connections, share contact details, find ideas you agree on and discuss how they can be achieved. To fight against the status quo without being organised is an impossible fight. If you are not part of an organisation, join one here. If you are, join the United Front, which has been developed against the increasing aggression towards Venezuela. There is a theme that is vital for every revolutionary. It is essential to clearly specify who are the friends and who are the enemies. We all know that Venezuela is not an enemy and war is not an answer. We all know that our left groups here are not an enemy and that sectarianism is not an answer. Only together can we demand and achieve that the Australian government immediately repair diplomatic relations with Venezuela, denounce the US military aggression against Venezuela, and affirm Venezuela's right to sovereignty and self-determination. Hands off! Venezuela! Hands off! Venezuela! Hands off! Venezuela! Hands off! Venezuela! Thank you very much. I'd like to invite Rintoul Evans to come to the stage. Of course.
My name is Rachel Evans, she, her, them, they, and I speak on behalf of Socialist Alliance. I acknowledge we are on the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. This land was never ceded. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. And let us acknowledge the fierce resistance led by First Nations warriors now, and pay tribute to the Indigenous heroes and martyrs of Palestine, paying the ultimate price for resisting Western imperialism. From Gadigal to Gaza, long live the Intifada. This is an important action to resist Trump's war against Venezuela and Latin America. It comes on the back of 3 Hands Off Venezuela actions in Gadigal country in the last 2 months. 2 that have taken place at Palestine actions in Hyde Park and 1 that took place here at the Town Hall. We call on all justice-minded people to join us in demanding the Australian government call on the US to stop military intervention and threats to Venezuela, Colombia, Mexico and Latin America as a whole. In the 1500s, colonisation ravaged the global majority. But indeed, capitalism was born into the world dripping from head to foot from every pore with blood and dirt. And Latin America was a key region of capital super exploitation. But Latin America fought back. Cuba led the way in 1959 and their revolution has survived, but it is under severe attack with attempted invasions, then a crippling economic blockade. And now US President Donald Trump beats the war drums against Venezuela, oil-rich and anti-imperialist. Not content to aid and abet Israel's genocide against Palestine, from September this year, 87 fisher people, Colombians and Venezuelans trying to eke out an existence, have been summarily executed by US forces in the Caribbean and Eastern Pacific Ocean under the pretext of stopping the narcotics trade. Shame! Shame. There is no moral or legal justification for these murders. Trump has also stationed the most lethal aircraft carrier in the Caribbean Sea, in the largest build-up of US firepower in the region in some time. Then the US State Department designated Cartel dos Soles a terrorist organisation and accused Maduro of leading the cartel. Such a designation will give it the right to strike inside the country, said Donald Trump, and has given its military impunity from prosecution. Trump has threatened Colombia and Mexico with the same treatment. Shame! Shame! And Venezuela has been a particular target since revolutionary leader Hugo Chavez became president in 1998. And the US imposed crippling sanctions on the country in more recent years. And Colombia. Colombia is a world leader against US imperialism. President Gustavo Petro has stopped their oil exports to Israel, called on the UN to send peacekeepers to Gaza, and for people to join a global army against Israel. Colombia is organising a world-first divest from fossil fuel conference, so Trump comes for Colombia. Shame! Shame! And as the Speaker said before, Patrick said, the Australian ALP has said nothing about the US's illegal strikes or cautioned its ally about respecting countries' national sovereignty. So we need a strong movement to defend Venezuela and all of Latin America. A united, inclusive coalition cohered around a clear set of demands, which will draw the broadest forces into action against the US war drive and our government support for it. The demands: hands off Venezuela, hands off US and Trump out of Latin America for the moment will do just this. And in this country, we have shown we don't want our government supporting war and genocide. We rank number 2 in the world for Palestine protests, second only to Yemen. Further, Socialist Alliance calls on the federal ALP to stand with the people of Latin America and the Caribbean. The ALP must demand the US respect international law, lift the sanctions on Venezuela, and end its military deployment intimidation campaign in the region. We are in a brutal, vicious phase of capitalism. Palestine shows us how brutal this period is. If we are to win against this vicious regime, we need a united anti-war and working class resistance. El pueblo unido jamás será vencido. The people united will never be defeated. And we should all be ready to call a snap rally if the US bombs Venezuela. The US troops are gathering and are on the border. Patria o muerte. For Latin America, homeland or death. Hands off Venezuela! Hands off! Venezuela! Hands off! Venezuela! Hands off! Venezuela! Hands off! Venezuela! Thank you very much.
So, Rachel's from Socialist Alliance, if you want to have a chat with her, and any of their comrades here, I recommend it. Thank you. So, do we have Lindy Nolan here? Awesome. Lindy, CPAML, please come have a speak. I heard you're speaking for us. Oh. If you want to say anything brief, do you want to give you 5 minutes?
Very brief, because I didn't know what I was going to say.
Oh. Well, it's all yours. Thank you, Lindy.
Ouch. Even when it's small, you've got to be prepared. What can we say about the United States? It's lost every war since World War II. Came in late in World War II when Australia decided that it was going to shift to the USA in the middle of World War II, and John Curtin gave that famous Turn to America speech. President Truman contacted him and said, you're a traitor. As soon as it got difficult, you turned on your he didn't say the word or overlord, but I suppose it means your betters. That's never been given much credit in Australia. After World War II, the US moved in a big way in Australia. And a US communist policy leader, so-called communist leader, who said, we don't need communist parties, we don't need revolutions, we don't need any of that kind of thing, because we had this great united front with the Soviet Union, which 20 million dead. There's a reason the Soviet Union collapsed. You bomb a country to oblivion, you kill 20 million people, and without them Germany would have won the war, and then you vilify them and hate them. But the so-called communist US leader said, we don't need communism anymore. It'll all come through Parliament, and we're all good friends now. How long did it take for the first coups in South America? The endless coups, the endless massacres? Not that long. So here in Australia, the United States controls the commanding heights of our economy. We had the Whitlam's 50th anniversary recently. What did that teach Albo and all of the other Labor leaders since then? What did it teach them? Never ever stand up to the USA. Unless you're in opposition. You can do it in opposition. You can march along with 94% of the Australian people against the war in Iraq. And then, without even going to Parliament, John Howard sends us off to war. And everybody said, well, that was a defeat. That was a terrible defeat. If you don't fight, you've already lost. I was a teacher. Every single teacher in my school, every cleaner, every office work staff had a purple ribbon for peace in that period. They were with 94% of the Australian people. My principal stood up in front of a peace assembly organised by the kids and with my help and said, it was just before the war started, we should not go to this war, but at least if they do, we'll know we tried. Our kids were a Muslim, largely Muslim and Pacifica population. The kids came up to me after war was declared and they said, we didn't stop this war, but at least we tried. That is a victory to me, and it's the reason that only one mentally ill man who should have been in jail for conspiring to murder his wife did the Lindt Cafe Christmas horror. The people here knew who their enemies were. And I'll tell you one more story. Some of the kids at my school, their parents were called terrorists, and some of them in primary school and even in high school, when their parents went to work and they were supposed to go to school, ASIO came in and held those kids hostage with no parent, no adult present. Well, one of those girls whose father was labelled and never ever charged all over the front page of the newspaper, the butcher of Bankstown, she became our school captain and she did drama in my class. And those girls at Wiley Park stood up for their HSC exam. She was in year 5. And all of those girls agreed with her that, yes, this is the show we want to do. It was called Searching for Bin Laden. It had 3 other... He never appeared, strangely. Nobody knew where to find him. It was hilarious. It had 3 main characters apart from the people who were searching. And the punchline was, we're not the terrorists, they are. George Bush, Tony Blair, John Howard, Osama bin Laden. That gave them such hope to be able to speak like that. All of the kids in our school loved it. They saw it many, many times. And to me, that is what being a teacher is about. And if Venezuela is teaching people, that's enough for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindy, the CPAML. So if you want to check them out, please go talk to Lindy. Next we have, is Josh. Josh is from New South Wales Socialists, and we'll be speaking now. Thank you, Josh.
Thanks, Jack. Yeah, I'm speaking on behalf of New South Wales Socialists. I'm also a member of Socialist Alternative. And I also just want to start by acknowledging, we're protesting here today, of course, on stolen Gadigal land. And this always will be Aboriginal land. Now, firstly, of course, we have to condemn the despicable actions of the Trump administration. This includes the mass extrajudicial killing of Venezuelans without charge or trial in fishing boats under the most ludicrous, accusations of narco-terrorism. And what's more, we need to condemn, and perhaps even more worrying, the very frightening military build-up where the US is sending thousands of troops, aircraft carriers and ships to threaten an attack on Latin America, and in particular to threaten an attack on Venezuela. Now this of course has nothing to do with drugs. If you believe that, I've got a Harbour Bridge to sell you. This of course is all about the United States trying to impose or reimpose and reassert its position over Central and South America in relation to its main imperialist rival, China. The United States has obviously been worried for a long time about the encroachments, growing economic and political influence of China in Central and South America, and this is all one big pretext for the US to try to throw its weight around, to try to throw its military muscle around to, it hopes to improve its position, economic and political, its imperialist position in South America. And of course that is the underlying reason for the US's various interventions in Latin American politics in recent times. Of course, the threats made to Panama and the Panama Canal, of course, the interventions into Brazilian politics and the backing of Bolsonaro. It's not, Trump may have some ideological affinity with Bolsonaro, but the main reason is because the US wants to throw their weight around and threaten any growing ties with China. And of course, it's also behind the threats of Donald Trump and the Trump administration to the center-left government of Petro in Colombia. And of course, this is the entire rotten history of the United States, is that it views South America as its backyard. No one else is allowed to get involved. Only the US is allowed to be, the dominant foreign power exercising its influence in that region. This is, of course, the same United States who, via its proxy Israel, has been marauding around the Middle East, launching war after war after war, as well as genocide against the people of Gaza, to again try to strengthen and further the interests and the power of US imperialism in the Middle East as well. So we condemn these blatant imperialist actions by the United States. We condemn the despicable giving of the Nobel Peace Prize to Maria Corina Machado, who is a far-right Venezuelan activist allied to Donald Trump. She, obviously tries to pose as though she's some democracy activist. Nothing is further from the truth. If she is to have her way, it will only mean far more tyranny and inequality for the people of Venezuela. We also condemn, of course, the despicable Peace Prize given by FIFA to Donald Trump. What an absolute disgrace. This is yet another example of the beautiful game being destroyed by the scumbag capitalists who run that sport. And of course, we know that the whole world stands against Donald Trump and his actions in Gaza, and now his actions in Latin America. Now, the US, as I said, wants to use their military muscle to try to reassert their position in South America, partly. I think this is not simply about, the need to or the desire to seize Venezuelan oil. It's not quite that simple. There are already vast quantities of Venezuelan oil being exported to the United States every year, in collaboration, in fact, usually with giant US multinational corporations like Chevron, who are making tidy profits out of that. But it is part of the general picture of the US trying to throw its weight around in a kind of transactional way to force South America to cut deals, as in to end their various deals with China and to strengthen the US's hand there. And of course, we have to condemn our own government, which not only is backing these US imperialist moves in South America, but of course is also busy in the process of furthering their ties to the US military and spending billions and billions and billions more dollars to be part of this US imperialist effort to fight a future war against China. Of course, we know already, we can see that also means cutting billions and billions and billions of dollars out of welfare budgets in this country. And right now, despicably, they're going for the NDIS to fund their war drive with China. This is what it means when we say the war, the imperialism and war is also an attack on the working class at home. Now, I think we should say as well that opposing the US's imperialist interventions in the Middle East, in South America, does not mean that we should politically tie ourselves to the governments of South America. And I'll just quote briefly from a joint statement from this is from a couple of socialist groups in Venezuela and Colombia, and they say, and I quote, "We stress that the anti-imperialist defense of Venezuela does not mean backing a government as nefarious as Maduro's, which by its nature we believe is not capable of consistently defending the country from a foreign power like the US, while it continues to subject the Venezuelan people to miserable conditions of super exploitation, repression, and violations of rights, embezzlement, and ruin. The harmful effects of the capitalist and counter-revolutionary policies of this government have been aggravated by the imperialist sanctions." And unfortunately, it is one of the reasons the US is feeling more confident to threaten Venezuela, is because of the massive unpopularity of the Maduro government, given the disaster it has prevailed over for the working class of Venezuela. But as socialists in the West, of course, we have to first and foremost say that we oppose any imperialist intervention in Venezuela, no matter what bullshit pretext they try to use, whether that's fighting war on drugs or fighting for democracy and freedom. We've seen it all before, a million times over. So we stand unequivocally with the people of Venezuela and the whole region and their resistance to US empire, while at the same time backing the people of those countries to fight for socialism and genuine equality in their own countries too. Thank you.
Is here representing Socialist Alternative and the New South Wales Socialists. I think you're looking a little bit disengaged, little comrades, so I think we'll practice our chants again to wake you up a little bit. Here we go. Hands off! Hands off! Hands off! Hands off! Much more awake. Let's do one more. Bombing civilians is a crime. Oh, he remembers it. I'll say it again for you. Bombing civilians is a crime from Venezuela to Palestine. Bombing civilians is a crime.
Venezuela to Palestine.
Bombing civilians is a crime.
Venezuela to Palestine.
Bombing civilians is a crime.
Venezuela to Palestine.
Bombing civilians is a crime.
Venezuela to Palestine.
Thank you, everyone. Last we have Ian. Ian is representing Socialist Solidarity. Thank you, Ian.
Like others, I want to acknowledge the traditional owners on the land who stand today and recognise their ongoing struggle for justice and self-determination, and in particular I think the connection that we have to fight, their fight against racism and the fight we face now against our own government and against March for Australia and Put Australia First and others. Look, others have already said that the US hasn't got aircraft carriers and troops and fleets of Navy ships and helicopters, etc., in the Caribbean because they're concerned about any war on drugs. Like if they were really concerned about a war on drugs, they would be arresting Elon Musk. It's got nothing to do with what they're doing with Venezuela. It's very clear, and as other people have said, the US is concerned about reclaiming. In fact, that's one of the things that Pete Hesketh said, that the renamed Secretary of War, which I think probably is appropriate in that respect. I'll come back to that. But Hesketh himself said, with President Trump, we are going to reclaim our backyard. That's out of Hesketh's mouth. I mean, we recognise that. We recognise that from the beginning, but I think one of the things about Trump and Hesketh is that they're not shy about actually saying what they really want to do. I didn't bring meant to bring the copy of the Australian, but it's got the headline in the 5th page or whatever it is, saying something like, Trump says we'll be bombing Venezuelan land very soon. Right? He uses his press conferences in the White House to actually spell it out. Now I doubt that he's actually going to declare war on Venezuela. I doubt that because I think they've seen what happened, when they attempted coup against Chavez in the early 2000s. I mean, in spite of any criticisms you might have of Maduro's government, I think the people of Venezuela know what a US-backed regime would actually mean, and they would rise to the occasion as people right across Latin America, and not just Latin America. I think in that sense, in that regard, I think there is a mass movement across the world for Palestine, which looks at Venezuela and recognises the imperialism that represents in Venezuela is what they've been witnessing in terms of the US providing the arms for Israel. And I think when you look at Trump tries to say he's the peace president, but you look, it is far from that. I don't need to convince this crowd of that. When you think of what they've actually done in Israel, the fact that the genocide in Israel has been carried out and only been able to carry it out because of the support of American imperialism, providing political support, providing cover for Netanyahu, providing the arms, etc. And the US itself has intervened. It's intervened in Yemen, it's intervened in Iran, it's intervened in Ukraine, it's intervened in Gaza. The fact is that America, I think, as a declining economic power, is very, very concerned to try to use its military power to regain a hold, in terms of being the world's policeman and its position as far as world, imperialism is concerned. And again, other people have said it, but America has watched, not just about Latin America, it's watched elsewhere to see the declining influence that that it's had. And as Latin America has slipped away, it's very concerned to regain that control. Venezuela's connection with China, with Iran, with Russia bothers the US enormously. And I think it's also worth pointing out that Trump's war at home, the disgusting mobilisation of ICE and the National Guard and picking up immigrants, in the streets of New York and Detroit, New Orleans and other places other cities around the US, is linked to his war, in Latin America. The kind of slanderous, disgusting, racist things he said, about migrants in the US helps him in the argument that he has about prosecuting a war in Venezuela, in Latin America. And I think that's why we do have to take a very, very clear stand. It's not a matter of being uncritical of Maduro, but it is a matter of being absolutely critical against the United States, and we have to be absolutely critical of the fact that other people have said that the Australian government, the Labor government here, is now attached to the hip with US imperialism. It's silent about Venezuela. It's not just silent about Venezuela. It's silent about ICE. It's silent about everything, which Trump has done. It stands out, so very obviously. And at the same time, we see the Labor government over and over again, increased US rotations, expanding the bases. The fact that there'll be no inspection of the nuclear submarines or whether they're actually nuclear armed. There'll be no inspection of the B-1 bombers about whether they're nuclear armed. Tyndall base has been expanded to allow B-52s. They've used Tyndall and Cairns to refuel B-1 bases. How much closer could Australia get in terms of backing US imperialism? So are we surprised when they say nothing about Venezuela? Of course we're not surprised when they say nothing about Venezuela. They say nothing critical about US imperialism because the Labor government is tied, as I said, is tied to the hip, with Trump and US imperialism. So I think the point that I'd like to make is that we do say hands off Venezuela, absolutely. But part of that struggle has got to be an argument here and a campaign here which says break the ties with US imperialism, close Pine Gap, don't get rid of the ANZUS alliance, close the US bases, scrap AUKUS. That kind of connection to make it very clear that the solidarity campaign with Venezuela is also a campaign against US imperialism and Australia's ties with US imperialism in Australia. So, like others, we're absolutely determined to do what we can to make sure that there is no intervention in Venezuela, and to build an anti-imperialist movement here which says hands off Venezuela, no ties with the US, break the US alliance. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. And inspired by Ian's idea of our demands, I just want to quickly mention that this action didn't come out of nowhere. It came out of an organised effort across the country by certain groups and certain individuals that agreed on these following demands. They agreed that this movement should demand the Australian government immediately repairs diplomatic relations with Venezuela, that the Australian government should denounce US military aggression against Venezuela and affirm Venezuela's right to sovereignty and self-determination. Now I've got one final speaker before we do some photos and some final chants. So please onto the stage. So I don't know your name. Jim, thank you, Jim.
Hello everyone. I'd like to recognise also that we're on Aboriginal land here and that was never ceded. My name's Jim McIlroy. Among other things, I've been a long-standing activist in the Australia-Venezuela Solidarity Network, AVSN. I just want to mention for newer people here that there has been a long-standing solidarity movement in Venezuela with the Chavista movement going back almost 2 decades, and AVSN has been involved in that. Okay, we face a new challenge here. This is the most serious threat facing Venezuela probably since maybe the 2002 coup against Chavez. Failed coup, by the way, also organised by the CIA. Now, even today, I just noticed on the media that there's an escalation in the process going on. Aeroplanes are starting to circle closer and closer to the Venezuelan coast. So while it's possible that they won't dare take action, we need to be really ready. We need to be ready in case that happens. And I just want to stress that we should all be ready. We should keep up our connections through emails and Facebook and whatever, to be ready to take instant, short-term action if an actual attack takes place on Venezuela. So I know in Melbourne, the LASNet and other organisations have called for a rally the following day. If an attack places, they're going to have a rally the following day. We can decide about that by consultation, but we need to be ready to mobilise in even larger numbers we have today in case there's an actual attack on Venezuela. This is a serious threat to the people of Venezuela. It'll lead to a massacre without question of the left and the progressive movement and the people's movement in Venezuela, so we must be ready. So I'd like to finish with that note that we need to all be ready and keep in touch and be ready in case to build a very strong action if an attack takes place. Thank you very much, comrades.
Thank you, Jim. Now, this snap action that Jim just told us about has been organised by this united front that's been developed across the country. We've decided that if an attack on Venezuela occurs, we will have an action within 24 hours of that attack. If you would like to be notified of when that action is and participate in the organising of this united front, please, we have a QR code on this side of our posters, and you can sign up to a statement there, and from that we can have your contact details to follow up with you, to help you, so you can help us and we can help you organise an action in support of Venezuela. Now, before we do some photos, let's do some more chants. One I want to introduce you is, we want the Yankees to go home. So when I say a statement, you say go home. Yankee! 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 Now some slight alterations. Please continue saying go home when I finish this statement. What do we say to the US assassins? Go home! What do we say to the US oligarchs? Go home! What do we say to the American oil barons? Go home! What do we say to the Yankees? Go home! Hands off! Venezuela! Hands off! Venezuela! Hands off! Venezuela! Hands off! Venezuela! Now, back to our other one. Here's one of our demands. Penny Wong, reject Trump's lies, rebuild Venezuelan ties. Penny Wong, reject Trump's lies. 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 Rebuild Venezuelan ties. Last one, everyone, and then we'll have the photo up on the steps all together. Please bring your banners and your posters, any sort of thing to show off who you are and why you are here. Hands off! Venezuela! 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 Let's go, comrades! Thank you very much! Up on the stairs for the group photo!
Long live Venezuela! Long live Venezuela! Long live Venezuela! Hands off Venezuela! Venezuela! Venezuela!
Yankee go home! Yankee go home! Yankee go home! Yankee go home! Yankee go home!
Thank you, comrades!
All right, well that's pretty much it. That's done. Yeah, it seems to be mostly organised by various different socialist groups. I guess being Venezuela. Anyway, all right, that's it. I'm done. I'm out of here. We'll just have a quick look at what's going on down here. This crowd seems to have increased a little. There I guess it's Falun Gong, or I don't know what the hell it is. They're here, they're always handing out shit and getting people to sign stuff, and they're here all the time. I don't know what that what's that flag? I should know. I should know what all the flags are. Stop forced organ harvesting in China. CCP out, Free China.
We welcome the Chinese Communist Party into the global order, and they took advantage of all of its benefits.
So obviously someone's giving a speech out loud. They've got a good stretch going on here. Independent tribunal. Yeah, learn your flags, mister. Learn your flags before you come out next time. Help protect victims of CCP's transnational repression. Giving out brochures, getting people to sign. Yeah, anyway, it is what it is. Like, heaps of brochure there's heaps of people handing out the brochures tonight. You can't get past without getting a newspaper or something or other. Anyway, that's it. Church. All right, all done.